Joining me now is Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Sir, that is not a new issue in terms of the energy issues that Europe has been dealing with, but it's really come to a head now. I think it was a fair point by the president. Your thoughts about Germany's dependence on Russia for energy?
Well, we wish they didn't. I bet you the Germans probably do too. There's a couple things here. First of all, NATO is still a good idea. It has to be modernized. It has a new purpose and a new meaning in the 21st century, but I continue to believe and support NATO. This notion that our partners in NATO are not contributing enough, it's not new. In fact, if you go through history, you'll find that in the midst of the Cold War, president after president and administration after administration had the same complaint. So that's not a new complaint. I think there's a big difference between saying, I don't think that our partners are doing enough, which is valid, and then saying, you know, what some are claiming the president's saying, which is, I think we should get rid of NATO. I haven't heard him say that. He's certainly questioned the arrangement. And but if you want to just question whether they're doing enough, I think that's a valid question because other administrations have done the same. And on the issue of energy, I go back to what you started with. Yes, we wish Germany wasn't as dependent on Russia. It's a choice in the decision they made, and maybe there's a chance to revisit that.
Given your experience and the committee that you sit on, how would you characterize the threat from Russia today?
Well, Russia poses two threats. The first is obviously a territorial threat to its near abroad, the countries that surround it. I think Putin would love to see that the Western alliance, the Europe and NATO alliance fall apart. And one of the things he could do to challenge that is to try to make moves first on the countries in its periphery like he did with Ukraine and the taking of Crimea and what he did against Georgia back about 10 years ago, and then show that NATO can't do anything about it. And so that's one threat. The other is asymmetrical. They don't have the economic power, for example, of China, but what they can do is they can use asymmetrical, unconventional means, whether it's cyber warfare, influence warfare, and the like, to interfere. And the third is geopolitical. They have figured out, Putin has figured out how he can get involved, for example, in places like Syria, be an irritant to or a competitor to the United States without a significant investment of personnel or funds or a great threat. So I would say that they're not the threat China is, but they are a significant irritant in global affairs and one that we should, be very clear-eyed about.
And cooperating with Iran as well, we could add. Let me ask you about the Supreme Court. Florida Representative Ted Deutsch said this about Cavanaugh. Important precedents that have moved America forward toward a more equal and just society could be shredded. The Senate now has the responsibility to protect Americans from an ideologically driven nominee whose confirmation would create a Supreme Court bent on setting America decades back in time. And yet the Susan B. Anthony List poll shows that in Florida, 56% of Florida voters want Senator Bill Nelson to confirm Judge Cavanaugh. What do you think he might do in the end?
Yeah, you know what? Well, I don't know what he's going to do, but I can tell you that quote from that congressman, they would have said that about anybody the president nominated. Judge Cavanaugh has been on the bench for a long time. It's funny, these people get confirmed by the Senate. No one raises these issues. All of a sudden, they get nominated to the Supreme Court. They're the most horrible person in the world. It's just crazy. Bottom line is this guy's well qualified. We're going to go through his record like anybody else is. But ultimately, from what we've seen on his resume and the like, he's as qualified as anyone in the country to be on the United States Supreme Court. And no matter who the president nominated, they were going to say that about him.
The same thing as shown by their failures on cut and paste. That was pretty funny to watch.
Yeah, that's right.
I do want to leave some time to ask you about your efforts for paid family leave. I understand you're going to be introducing a bill soon.
Yeah, we're making the finishing touches. We had a great 2-hour meeting yesterday at the White House with Ivanka Trump and a couple of my colleagues here from the Senate. And look, it's an important thing, and we can do it in a way that's fiscally conservative. We're not going to create a new entitlement, but we do want to create a new option in which Americans, when they have a child and want to take leave, don't have to go bankrupt if their employer doesn't provide paid leave. It allows them to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and take 4 weeks of my Social Security benefits now instead of later when I retire, because I can't afford to go without a paycheck for 4, 6, 8 weeks. Parenting is the most important job anybody has in America, and the consequences of it should not be bankruptcy or fiscal distress. A significant percentage of lower income workers go on public assistance. They require welfare assistance because their job doesn't provide paid leave, and when they have a child, they have to drop out of the workforce. So it's not good for the country. We're already spending money on it. This is a better way to give people access to their money and do so.
What would you say to criticism of the effort? Not that I think people agree on the merits that it's a good idea, but getting there is what they're questioning, and they're worried about hastening the insolvency of Social Security, which is already in a lot of trouble.
Well, there's a study out there that says that. I don't know how they can do that study if the bill hasn't been filed yet, so the details are not available. That's certainly not something we want to see happen. But ultimately, what we're talking about is giving people access to their money ahead of time, and we believe, and that's what we were working through yesterday, that that can be done in a way that's meaningful for parents, and at the same time not threaten Social Security's viability moving forward.
And
but it's an innovative way to do it. We're open to a better idea, but no one else has come up with one that doesn't grow the debt, it doesn't put a mandate on businesses that are economically infeasible, and provide parents this assistance.
And it looks like in something I just read that Senator Gillibrand might actually be somebody that you guys could work with on that. All right, we'll have you back to talk about that as that goes through the process. Senator Marco Rubio, thank you.
Thank you.